Yuet, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. First of all, I want to ask about your company, but let's just talk about this whole situation first. COVID-19 has certainly accelerated digital adoption among MSMEs, especially in Malaysia. However, there's a lot of room for improvement, obviously. But what some of the trends do you see in digital adoption among MSMEs in Malaysia during the pandemic?
You're absolutely right that there has been a lot of digital, adoption, and there has actually been a lot of the whole acceleration of digital adoption has been very core to micro SMEs, right? And that was, I would say, one of the silver linings from the pandemic, right? So post the pandemic itself, more and more micro SMEs are looking at a few key things, right? How can they be able to sell their products on new channels? How can they tap onto new customers, for example? So one of the most common themes that we're now seeing with digital adoption across micro SMEs is very much about how can I grow my top line? How can I grow my sales? So one example would be we saw a lot of micro SMEs who historically were selling in brick and mortar businesses. They wanted to be able to tap onto online channels to start promoting their brand, to start selling their products online. So one of the easiest ways to be able to start selling online is to actually go onto marketplaces. So you have your likes of your Shopee, your Lazada, and many others as well. And then, of course, we also saw another base of businesses which were already selling online on marketplaces. We then saw them evolving, right, and investing more resources into building their own e-commerce website. So they have more flexibility, right, with how they want to sell, how they want to be able to market their products online. Then we also saw for those who are already selling on e-commerce websites, they were looking at digital adoption around how can I tap onto new channels so that I can drive more traffic, more sales to my e-commerce website. And then later on, as the pandemic passed, right, or as the pandemic evolved, right, when businesses were able to resume operations physically, we then saw a lot of brick and mortar businesses who had already set up their own e-commerce website start exploring new digital solutions as to how they can now bring more traffic, right, back to their physical stores as well. So the most common theme that we have seen in the past 2 years is very much about how can brick and mortar businesses, how can these micro SMEs be able to sell more? How can they reach perhaps new customers? How can they tap onto new channels, right? So that they can keep growing sales, right? Despite the very difficult environment that we're all in.
For companies that started their digitalization journey during pandemic, certainly they captured a large amount of consumer data. How should they manage this data and getting the right type of consumer data and act upon the information to drive quantifiable results like sales conversion?
Again, a very, very good question. I would actually say that it is not in fact the case, right? It is not really the case that every single business that we have spoken to or every SME out there has been able to capture customer data. It is actually quite a mixed bag. You have a group of companies who have, acknowledged, right, the importance of having their own customer data, and this happened pre-pandemic, right? And they have actually started this whole journey, right, of wanting to own and wanting to collect this customer data. But actually, there is still a vast majority of businesses out there who have not started on this journey, who have not, invested efforts or resources, right, in being able to own this customer data, right? So I would say that it ultimately does boil down to two key questions. Do businesses, have clarity as to what kind of customer data they should collect? And how they should use this customer data to drive, as you rightly mentioned, tangible outcomes such as sales. Because without having clarity around these two questions, businesses will not want to invest effort and resources in having this customer data. So we
That
often,
Yeah,
yeah,
please continue.
we often talk about how, to our SMEs itself, we often talk about what type of customer data they should collect. And for us, it's almost always things like, email, mobile about your existing customers. So you can reach out to them, knowing what they're buying, how much they're spending with your business, what are their product preferences, right? Which stores do they go to? When are they shopping with your brand? All this information is very, very important because when you have access to all this information, which we like to use fancy words like first party data, But when we have access to all this information, we can use it for better marketing. You can outreach to your customers when they have been dormant, when they have not been visiting your store for a few months. You can reach out to them, with very targeted messages to invite them to come back to your brand. You could use this information to identify people who are very similar to your existing base of customers so that you can then tap into new opportunities as well. So therefore, when businesses have full clarity over these two questions, that's when they'll be most willing to actually collect more customer data and invest effort in actually doing so operationally.
Mhm. Understanding the data and how to use it for marketing is crucial, and scale is providing services. This service. However, for businesses, cost is always a concern. How should companies allocate financial and non-financial resources in managing this transition?
Cost has always been a very critical question for most businesses, especially the micro SMEs. And
Yeah.
this has actually been even more top of mind post the pandemic itself, right? Post the beginning of the pandemic itself, because businesses have been badly hit by the pandemic. We often describe the current phase as survival mode. We're all still just trying to catch up on lost sales, trying to recover from all the lost opportunities, right, during the pandemic. So cost is definitely the most important criteria when it comes to marketing and investing into building new capabilities as well, right? And therefore, on the contrary, whenever we speak to our SMEs, we don't want them to come to the perception or the understanding that you must first invest a lot of money in order to be able to own or collect customer data. Because sometimes, right, the opportunity to collect customer data is already within the business itself, right? We always advise our business owners, our clients to take a look at your business operationally and try and identify touch points, simple things that you can already do within your business that doesn't require new cost, new investment financially, right? To then capture this data. And some specific examples could be things like when someone visits your physical store, but they don't convert, right? Perhaps we can give them an incentive. Just scan a QR code at a 10 card at your cashier or at the entrance of the store, submit your contact details. In return, you get a discount voucher, for example. Or perhaps someone who has spent a certain amount of money in the store as they're leaving, let's give them an incentive to also submit their contact details. These are just some low hanging fruit initiatives that small businesses can actually incorporate within their operations so that they can start collecting data without having to have a lot of financial investment.
Yeah, a scale is specialized in digital marketing platform for brick and mortar businesses and continue to drive tangible results for MSMEs, especially in this region. What are the challenges or hurdles do you see or foresee that MSMEs should overcome when it comes to adopting digitalization, including digital marketing?
That's a really good question as well. And this is a question that we spend a lot of time pondering on. At the end of the day, within a market like Malaysia, many of the MSMEs that we meet, right, that we see are actually brick and mortar businesses, right? They are the backbone of our economy, right? 80-90% of all the sales transaction is really still happening with the brick and mortar space as well, right? So, to that question earlier, right? What are some of the challenges that we see? It is often not just technology, it is often not just cost. It's actually more about changing perceptions, right? Many of these brick and mortar businesses that we speak to, they believe that digital marketing or the marketing solutions out there, they work better for e-commerce businesses, right? And that, if you promote a brand online, then naturally the sales should happen online. But actually, that is quite the opposite. It is, in fact, very possible for you to, as a brick and mortar business, promote your brand and your products online, but drive sales in the offline world, right? And in fact, that can be a very, very fruitful, fruitful solution for these businesses as well. So that is where a lot of the challenges that we see is really about helping businesses like this change their perception and help them be more willing to try out some of these solutions.
All right. As for the first quarter of 2021, you have established scale offices in Indonesia and the Philippines and working with over 6,000 businesses around the globe to enable offline businesses to grow in-store sales. There are countries with huge population. they are basically with huge population as compared to other countries such as Malaysia. But do they need a different approach as compared to Malaysia, for instance, or any other smaller population countries in terms of digital marketing and digital adoption?
Yeah. So we are incredibly excited about some of these opportunities that we see in in Indonesia and Philippines, and fortunately we have learned a lot of things from the work that we were doing in Malaysia. So we do see some level of commonality, right, when we actually work with businesses in Indonesia and Philippines. For example, the product that we have spent meaningful amounts of time enhancing, getting feedback from Malaysian SMEs, we have tested out in new markets as well, and they work just as well for these new markets. But of course, there are still some differences when it comes to these countries because they are very populous, as you did rightly mention as well. The SME network in those markets are extremely large, very, very vast. They are all over the different countries. So there are a few differences that we see. For example, when we want to work with these SMEs, we cannot work with them in silo. We want to go in and be able to enable the communities, the associations that are already working directly with these SMEs. We want to be able to work with these associations such that we can then reach a much broader network of SMEs rather than on our single effort alone. Second thing that we see, which we need to also recognize, is that in both countries itself, the tech savviness can differ a lot, right, between the metros all the way to the provinces and so on. So therefore, any technology that we are driving adoption for, they need to be very simple to use. It cannot be overly complicated. It cannot require any integration, any hardware integration, no app whatsoever, and it must work well even in a situation where internet connectivity is sometimes not so strong or is sometimes patchy as well. So these were some of the things that we had to recognize and obviously make sure that the scale solution is well designed around these restrictions.
Let's talk about scale. Share with us your journey. How do you envision scale to be in the competitive market?
Yeah. The scale journey has actually been a very eventful one for us, I must say, because in all cases, right, when starting a new platform, it is always eventful, but it has been particularly eventful for us because we started in 2019 period, which was pre-pandemic. At that point in time, we got a lot of opportunities, right, to work, and we were fortunate because we got to work with business owners, with management, marketers who were very instrumental in our journey in helping us shape our product and telling us what works really well, what works less well. And that was a very, very important part of our journey on how we actually got started. And then shortly after, right, post 2019, 2020, when we started going into the year, that was when the pandemic hit the shores. And that changed quite a lot of things for us and for our end clients as well. Many of our end clients were very badly impacted by the pandemic. The first few months, we saw a lot of businesses take a step back operationally just to see what was happening. And the first 2 months from the pandemic was really just about monitoring the situation. And shortly after that, businesses realized that this is going to be quite long term. So we started seeing a lot of offline businesses who historically were not as receptive to trying out new technologies actually coming to us. And that was actually a silver lining for us because now the brick and mortar businesses, when they think about marketing, they really care about results, sales, quality, footfall, and so on. So that was where Scale was really able to support some of these businesses. And of course, the space that we are in, which is the marketing space, can be a very competitive space. But at the same time, we know that many of the platforms out there do very, very good jobs, do a lot of good work when it comes to the e-commerce space. And then where we come in is really being able to work with these businesses that are so badly impacted by the pandemic to be able to drive sales and quality footfall for them.
Share with us also your growth trajectory, especially your plan to increase brand presence
Actually
in a
been a
key
very,
market.
very critical year for us. We were very fortunate again because we saw and we were able to double our growth in the retail segment on a year-on-year basis, which is by no means an easy feat given the situation, given the retail market itself. So we're very happy with the opportunities that brands have given us, and we were able to deliver very positive growth both for the business and for our clients' businesses as well. So within the Southeast Asia market, again, this year will be a fairly critical year for us. We have a lot of exciting initiatives that have been lined up, both in terms of partnerships, acquisitions, or even on a product level. And one of the few things that we're looking to do in the Southeast Asian market is to really be able to collaborate with even more stakeholders in the ecosystem, agencies, marketers who are already working with brick and mortar businesses. We want to also be able to give them access to our technology so that jointly as a community, we can all improve and all drive even more impact for these brick and mortar businesses. So we do have a lot of exciting things lined up for Southeast Asia, and we're looking forward to being able to really execute some of these plans in the coming year.
Last but not least, Yuet, what does the future of scale look like, and what can users look forward to moving forward?
For scale itself, we always remind ourselves that our goal at the end of the day is to be able to be that go-to platform for all the brick and mortar businesses, right? Any brick and mortar business, if you're looking for a way to be able to drive more success, more results for your physical store, we want to be that technology partner for them, right? And give them all the different digital solutions for them to be able to achieve that. And that is very much the goal for scale itself, right? And we have, again, as mentioned, we have quite a few things lined up. But one of the key things that SMEs in Malaysia can definitely look forward to is last year in Singapore, we were able to bring together a few hundred SMEs across the nation to host a nationwide digital voucher sale event, which drove a lot of success for these SMEs. This year, we're hoping to be able to replicate the same at a much larger scale, at a much grander scale in Malaysia. So SMEs can certainly, look forward to these opportunities, right, as we roll out, in this coming year.
All right, Yuet, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.